Let's take a look at communicating performance management systems. In general, having more and better knowledge of the performance management system leads to greater employee acceptance and satisfaction. Organizations often design a communication plan to ensure that information regarding performance management systems is disseminated widely in the organization. A good communication plan answers the following questions. What is performance management? Answering this question involves providing general information about performance management and the goals of the system. How does performance management fit into our strategy? To answer this question, we should provide information on how the performance management system will help accomplish strategic goals. What's in it for me? A good communication plan describes the benefits of implementing performance management for all those involved. How does it work? Answering this question entails explaining when meetings will take place, what the purposes of each meeting are, and when decisions about rewards will be made. What are my responsibilities? The communication plan should include information on the roles and responsibilities of each person involved in each stage of the process. For example, it includes a description of the employees' and supervisors' main responsibilities in the performance management process. How is performance management related to other initiatives? The communication plan should include the information on the relationship between performance management and other initiatives and systems such as training, promotion, and succession planning. Even if a communication plan answers most of the important questions, people have cognitive biases that can still impact acceptance. The inclusion of an appeals process is important in gaining employee acceptance for the performance management system. This allows employees to understand that if there's a disagreement regarding performance ratings or any resulting decisions, they can be resolved in a non-retaliatory way. When an appeals process is in place, employees have the ability to question two types of issues, judgmental and administrative. Judgmental issues center on the validity of performance evaluation. Administrative issues involved whether the policies and procedures were followed. Typically, when an appeal is filed, the HR department serves as a mediator between the employee and the supervisor. An appeal sent to the HR department is usually called a Level 1 appeal. The HR department is in a good position to judge whether policies and procedures have been implemented correctly and has good information about the organization. The HR department gathers the necessary facts and either suggests corrective action to the supervisor or informs the employee that the decision or procedures were correct. If the rater does not believe corrective action should be taken, or if the employee does not accept the HR decision, the appeal process continues, and then it moves to Level 2. In Level 2, there's an outside arbitrator that usually consists of a panel of peers and managers. The panel reviews the case, asks questions, interviews witnesses, reaches precedents, and reviews policy. Many performance management systems can be plagued with rating errors. In fact, rating errors are usually the reason why so many performance management systems are criticized. Accordingly, the goal of rater error training, known as RET, is to make raters aware of what rating errors are and the ones they're likely to make, and to help them develop strategies to minimize those errors. In other words, the goal of RET is to increase rating accuracy by making raters aware of the unintentional errors they're likely to make. RET programs generally include definitions of the most typical errors and a description of the possible causes for each of those errors. Such programs also allow trainees to view examples of common errors and to review suggestions on how to avoid making those errors. RET does not guarantee increased accuracy. Because many rating errors are unintentional, simple awareness of errors does not mean that errors will not be made. Nevertheless, it's useful to expose raters to the range of possible errors. These errors include the following. Similar to me error. We tend to favor those who are similar to us. Consequently, in some cases, raters are more likely to give higher performance ratings to employees who are perceived to be similar to them in terms of attitudes, preferences, and demographics. Contrast error, which occurs when raters compare individuals with one another instead of against predetermined standards. This error is most likely to occur when raters complete multiple appraisal forms at the same time. Halo error occurs when raters fail to distinguish between the different aspects of performance being rated. If an employee receives a high score in one dimension, she also receives a high score in all other dimensions, even though performance may not be even across all of those dimensions. Primacy error occurs when performance evaluation is influenced mainly by information collected during the initial phases of the review period. Recency error occurs when performance evaluation is influenced mainly by information gathered during the last portion of the review period. Negativity error occurs when raters place more weight on negative information than on positive or neutral information. For example, the rater may focus on the one negative incident in the rating of customer service as a dimension. First impression error occurs when raters make an initial favorable or unfavorable judgment about an employee and then ignore subsequent information that does not support the initial impression. Spillover error occurs when scores from previous review periods unjustly influence current ratings. For example, a rater makes the assumption that an employee who has an excellent performer in the previous period ought to be an excellent performer in the current period. Stereotype error occurs when the rater has an oversimplified view of individuals based on group membership. The attribution error takes place when a rater attributes poor performance to an employee's dispositional tendencies like personality instead of the features of a situation. RET exposes raters to the different errors and their causes. However, being aware of unintentional errors does not mean that raters will no longer make those errors. Awareness is certainly a good first step, but we need to go further if we want to minimize unintentional errors. Frame of reference, or FOR, training helps improve rater accuracy by thoroughly familiarizing raters with the various performance dimensions to be assessed. The overall goal is to give raters skills so that they can minimize unintentional errors and provide accurate ratings on each performance dimension by developing a common FOR. A typical FOR training program includes a dimension or discussion of the job description for the individual being rated and the duties involved. Raters are then familiarized with the performance dimensions to be reviewed by reviewing the definitions of each dimension and discussing examples of good, average, and poor performance. Raters are then asked to use appraisal forms to rate fictitious employees, usually shown in video practice vignettes. The trainees are also asked to write a justification of the ratings. Finally, the trainer informs trainees of the correct ratings for each dimension and the reasons for such ratings and discusses differences between the correct ratings and those provided by the trainees. FOR training programs include the following steps. First, raters are told that they will evaluate the performance of 3 employees on 3 separate performance dimensions. Second, raters are given an appraisal form and instructed to read it as the trainer reads aloud the definition of each of the dimension in the scale anchors. Third, the trainer discusses various employee behaviors that illustrates various performance levels for each rating scale included in the form. The goal is to create a common performance theory, a frame of reference, among raters so that they will agree on the appropriate performance dimension and effectiveness level for different behaviors. Fourth, participants are shown a video clip of a practice vignette and are asked to evaluate the employee's performance using the scales provided. Next, ratings are provided by each participant and are shared with the rest of the group and discussed. The trainer seeks to identify which behaviors participants used to decide on their assigned ratings and to clarify any discrepancy among the ratings. Next, the trainer provides feedback to participants explaining why the employee should receive a certain rating, the target score on each dimension, and shows discrepancies between the target score and the score given by each trainee. It should be evident by now that 4 training can take quite a bit of time and effort to develop and administer, but it's well worth it. Specifically, not only are raters more likely to provide accurate ratings, but they're also more likely to help employees design effective development plans. Behavioral observation, BO training, is another type of program implemented to minimize unintentional rating errors. Behavioral observation training focuses on how raters observe, store, recall, and use the information about performance. Fundamentally, this type of training improves raters' skills at observing performance. For example, one type of BO training involves showing raters how to use observational aids such as notes or diaries. These observational aids help raters record a pre-established number of behaviors on each performance dimension. Using these aids helps raters increase the sample of instances observed and recorded during a specific time period. In addition, an aid such as a diary is an effective way to standardize the observation of behavior and record the critical incidents throughout the review period. In addition, it serves as a memory aid when filling out evaluation forms. Memory aids are beneficial because ratings based on memory alone, without notes or diaries, are likely to be distorted due to factors of friendship bias and time. Raters are likely to make several types of unintentional errors when providing performance information. Unintentional errors are the product of the complex tasks of observing, storing, and retrieving performance information, and resistance to change exacerbates these errors. BO training is particularly beneficial when performance measurement emphasizes results because raters learn how these behaviors are linked to results. Before the performance management system is fully rolled out, it's a good idea to test a version of the entire system so that adjustments and revisions can be made as needed. In the pilot test of the system, evaluations are not recorded in employee files. However, the system is implemented in its entirety from beginning to end, including all steps that would be included if the system had actually been implemented. In other words, meetings take place between supervisor and employee, performance data is gathered, developmental plans are designed, and feedback is provided. The most important aspect of the pilot test is that all participants maintain records, noting any difficulties they encountered, ranging from problems with the form to how performance is measured and feedback received. The pilot test allows for the identification and early correction of any flaws before the system is implemented throughout the organization. We should not assume that the performance management system will be necessarily executed or that it will produce the anticipated results. The pilot test allows us to gain information from the perspective of users on how well the system works. In addition, conducting a pilot test is another way to achieve early acceptance from your organization. This small group can act as champions for the performance management system, knowing that they had a say in its design, rather than feeling that the system was created by the HR department alone. In larger organizations, an important decision to be made is the selection of the group of employees to whom the system will be tested. The managers who will be participating should be willing to invest the resources required to do the pilot test. In addition, this group should be made up of managers who are flexible and willing to try new things. Thus, managers should know what the system will look like and receive a realistic preview before they decide to participate in the pilot test. In selecting the group, we must also consider that it should be sufficiently large and representative of the entire organization so that feedback will be sufficient. Pilot tests provide critical information to be used in improving the system before it's actually put in place. Pilot testing the system can provide huge savings and identify potential problems before they become irreversible and the credibility of the system is ruined permanently. Once the performance management system has been implemented organizational wide, it's important to use clear measurements to monitor and evaluate the system. This involves understanding the extent to which the training programs are achieving the objective of minimizing rating errors. Evaluation data should include reactions to the system and assessments of the system's operational and technical requirements. For example, a confidential survey could be administered to all employees asking about perceptions and attitudes regarding the system. This survey can be administered during the initial stages of implementation and then at the end of the first review cycle to find out if there's been any changes. Interviews can be conducted with key stakeholders, including managers and employees who have been involved in developing and implementing the performance management system. Several additional measures can be used on a regular basis to monitor and evaluate the system. One of the most basic measures is to assess the number of employees who are participating in the system. Quality of non-quantitative performance data. This information provided in an open-ended section of the appraisal form reflects the quality of performance data. Quality of follow-up actions. A good indicator of the quality of the system is whether it leads to important follow-up actions in terms of development activities or improved processes. A confidential survey can be distributed to all employees on a regular basis to gather information about how the supervisor is managing the performance discussion meetings. A confidential survey could also be distributed to assess the perception of the system's user, both raters and ratees. This survey can include questions about satisfaction with the equity, usefulness, and accuracy of the system. Overall cost-benefit ratios and return on investment can be beneficial. It's a fairly simple way to address the overall impact of the system and ask participants to rate the overall cost-benefit ratio. This is a type of bottom-line question that can provide convincing evidence for the overall worth of the system. A unit-level and organizational-level performance assessment is also important. This is another indicator that the system is working well and is provided the measurement of unit and organizational-level performance. Such performance indicators, such as customer satisfaction within specific units, might take some time to be reflected in the organization. We should not expect results as soon as the system is implemented. We should start to see some tangible results at the unit level a few months after a system is in place.